I'm Justin Mott, and welcome to my home here in Hanoi, Vietnam. If you're new here, my channel is dedicated to all things photography from the perspective of a full-time working pro. If that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing. For those of you that do subscribe, you're probably noticing I look a little bit different without a beard. You're probably also noticing I haven't been around for a couple weeks. Well, I had surgery for a deviated septum, and that was after a 1-week shoot for an NDA client that I can't talk about in Malaysia and then Singapore. But I got to use my Leica M11 in addition to my Sony kit. It was kind of a weird type of shoot. I wish I could talk about it, but I can't. But the M11 was awesome, and I had a great time being able to use that camera for a commercial shoot, and it also helps justify the cost. Just got back from the hospital yesterday, but I missed you guys and wanted to record this episode that I wrote while I was recovering on my hospital bed. So today I want to talk about, do you need to go to photography school to make a career in photography? Well, the short answer is no, you don't, especially with awesome YouTube teachers like myself out there. But I did go to school for photojournalism. I went to San Francisco State, and it helped me out in my career big time, not just in my journalism career, but all of my photography career. But it didn't teach me everything I needed to know, and I left in my final year. I never graduated. I'm a dropout, and I moved to Cambodia and then to Vietnam, camera in hand. I set up shop, and I never really went home. I had my last year of school was my own year of school, sort of learning on the fly, learning out in the real world. I just want to give you guys a quick reminder that I do have a few slots left for my Central Vietnam Photography Workshop coming up in December 2025. 5 participants total, a few spots left. You can check out that all-inclusive workshop and my online classes, my portfolio reviews, and much, much more at askmott.com. So first I'll start with, what did I actually learn in school? Well, first I learned ethics, fair, accurate storytelling. No faking, no staging. I learned AP standards, Associated Press standards, and I learned to follow them strictly throughout my entire journalism career. That got me over 100 assignments for the New York Times, along with various other prestigious newspapers and magazines. I also learned the fundamentals of photography: aperture, shutter, ISO, how to read and work with natural and artificial light. I learned all of the essentials. And everything I'm going to talk about today doesn't just relate to photojournalism. Most of it relates to all photography. Some's journalism, but most of it relates to all photography across all genres. Next, I learned a very important one. I learned accountability. If I ever gave up before getting the shot that I wanted to get, I had to explain that, not just to my professor, but in front of the whole class. It was brutal. We had these peer sessions where we put our work up on the big screen and everybody tore it apart, and you had to defend your work. It also taught me how to talk about my work as well. That's a very important part of photography, especially when you're networking and marketing yourself as a photographer. But that accountability of knowing each week that I had to produce, or else I was going to be torn apart, not just by my teacher, but as my classmates as well, that really taught me a lot about getting access, getting the shot, and just having no excuses. I'll never forget, there's like one quote, there's many quotes my professor taught me, and I always repeat it to my workshop students, is that there's no excuses published in your captions. And that experience in school really shaped me, because it made me learn what editors would think and say back to me when I was going to be out in the real world. And that doesn't just apply for newspapers and editors, that also applies to commercial jobs as well. No one wants to hear excuses about why your picture isn't good, that they just don't, and that's the reality of it. Next, I learned about storytelling, and not that sort of cliche thing where everyone's a storyteller, every picture's a story, that kind of thing. No, I really learned about how to build a story, how to sequence a story, emotional storytelling, how to capture moments that built the story, portraits that added to the story, details that told you something about the story, how to build that story, build that essay, build that project. That's hard to learn on YouTube. It took constant feedback from my fellow students and from my professor. It took critiques and reps and critiques and more reps. And it really helped me become a better overall storyteller in my editorial work, which I now use in my commercial work as well. Just that job last week was a commercial job, but shot in a very editorial reportage way for a major US company. So it didn't just help me in my work as a photojournalist, it helped me in all of my work as a photographer. Next, I learned how to use competitiveness to push me even further in my photography. We're always pinned against each other to see who's going to get published in the school newspaper, in monthly contests that were local and regional and even national, and then to get into the prestigious Eddie Adams workshop and then the Missouri Photo Workshop, and it pushed me hard, and I even won the Nikon Emerging Photographer Award for the Missouri Photography Workshop, and I got into Eddie Adams as well. So that really did push me. Having that level of competitiveness that now it's just sort of online. Maybe you're competitive with people that who gets likes and who doesn't, but for us, it really did push me because I could see the work that was being done by my classmates, but I could also see what was being done around the country by other schools, a lot more prestigious schools. And I learned what I needed to do to stack up against them because when I was going to get out of college, that's who I'd be competing with. So it truly did push me. It was a very healthy, competitive environment. And last, and not really what I learned, but just one of the benefits of going to school was full immersion. I lived photography while I was at school. I mean, I also worked full time as a bartender, but when I was at school, I talked it, I shot it, I failed, I grew, I failed, I grew again. And you don't get that once you're out in the real world, and most people don't. You can get a little slice of that in a workshop like mine, but truly it's hard to do that when you enter the real world. It's hard to have that full immersion in photography where you eat, breathe, and sleep. Well, I'm not breathing now, but but I will after this heals. But truly, it's such a great experience for that because everything outside of my bartending work was focused on photography, and that really did help me grow. So now what I didn't learn in school, which I wish I had, and really didn't tell you this kind of stuff, business. At my school, I had no clue about anything about the business side of photography when I left. No clue how to invoice, handle late payments, which the editorial world, they were always late, always took forever. Didn't know to charge for travel days, set editorial rates, first commercial rates, usage rates, all that kind of stuff. Had no clue. We didn't learn anything about that at all. And there's so many things I wasn't prepared for when I started. I didn't even think about retirement. I didn't think about any of that stuff. But it really didn't teach me anything about working for myself as an entrepreneur, and then specifically in the freelance world as a photographer. I didn't learn anything about marketing, networking, building a website, surviving as a solo shooter, building a business, thinking of yourself as a business, what to do when you're not shooting, to be productive, to build your name, to build your business, to grow as a photographer, and build a sustainable business as a photographer. I learned none of that at school at all. I had to learn everything on the fly. But, that accountability and that work ethic that I learned in school really did help me, and that competitiveness, all that stuff I learned at school really pushed me to learn that stuff on my own. So it was quite valuable to get that experience. And I do think that's one of the things that helped me stay a photographer now 20 years, to help me grow a successful business where I have a commercial photography and video production company with full-time employees, and we shoot in different countries around the world, and we're still busy to this day. And I also think all those ups and downs taught me the reality of being a photographer, that it's not just always growing straight up, go on, it's up and down. It taught me to know that I don't know everything and to be prepared for shifts in the industry. I mean, I don't have to do YouTube right now. I don't have to teach online classes, do workshops, but I love it. I really do love it, but it's also something that helps me prepare for if things do go wrong. So I'm always trying to think ahead, think long term, and I just happen to love what I do as well. So was it worth it in the end? Yeah, for me, it was. It was worth it for the time that I put in, for all the things that I mentioned. But then again, I went to a state school. I worked full-time as a bartender in San Francisco, and I paid my way through college, and I was debt-free when I left. I'd gone to like one of those fancy schmancy schools that cost several $100,000. Yeah, I think I would have been screwed. I'd probably still be paying it back now. Now, me, I moved out to Asia. I lived out here. I've lived out here my whole career. I didn't follow a playbook. I learned the essentials, and then I learned that I didn't know anything about the business side. I stayed curious. I kept pushing year after year. I kept evolving year after year. And now, 20 years later, I'm still here, still working, still shooting, still learning. So that's my experience with school. I'm sure everyone has different experiences. Fine art's going to be different. Commercial photography is going to be different, but there's a lot of similarities there. I would just say to people out there, be careful of that high debt, because it's hard to get high paid jobs in photography straight out of school, even 20 years out of school. A lot of my friends are quite talented and they don't do this anymore. I still do. I still love it. I still get work, but I think I'm in the minority doing that. Sorry about my voice today. I'm recovering still. Sorry about my absence. I'm back now. It's great to be back. Thank you guys for being patient with me. Thanks for putting up with my voice today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, don't forget to check out my Central Vietnam Photography Workshop, all that and more, my one-on-one classes, my mentorship program. If you want to learn, you want your own education, and don't want to carry a bunch of debt afterward, don't worry, I won't charge you a couple $100,000. You can check out all my pricing and more at askmott.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day.